Hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar on forest inventory data collection and reporting using Prism. So if you're a forestry or a climate solutions company that's involved with cruising and you're interested in shaving hours off each day of inventory and data collection and reporting, and I really mean hours, then this webinar is for you. So my name is Kevin Lim. I'm the president and CEO of Lim Geomatics. I'll be one of your co-hosts, if you will, for this webinar. And the other co-host is Alexander Ryerson, or we refer to him fondly as Xander Ryerson. He's an account manager here at Lim Geomatics, and he'll be giving part of this webinar alongside with me. So in terms of agenda, I'll give you a brief overview of who Lim Geomatics is, just for those folks who may not know who we are, or have heard of us, or don't really know the technology or the types of technology we develop. We'll just give you a quick overview. We'll then talk about Prism, and so really, folks who are here, you're interested in learning more about what it is. So we've kind of set this webinar up as an introduction to Prism. We'll talk about the value proposition of Prism and really what problems are we trying to solve? What are the unique things about Prism? But of course, that's all text. That's all me describing things. There's nothing better than seeing Prism in action. So Xander will give a bunch of demos in terms of what Prism can do, and hopefully it'll get you excited, and you'll be able to connect the dots at the end of the webinar and agree with us in terms of how powerful Prism is as a solution. And time permitting, we'll have some Q&A with folks in this webinar. So a little bit about Lim Geomatics. We were founded in 2006. We're a Canadian company. We're headquartered in lovely Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. On the picture on the left just gives you a nice sense. We've got some historical components in the city. It's beautiful. It's lovely in the summer, and being in Canada, we do have winter. And on the right, the canal often freezes over, although it did not do that this year. And it's the world's longest skating rink. There's beaver tails you can buy on the ice to eat. For some reason, when we invite a lot of our customers from around the world in winter, let's just say the RSVPs don't come rolling in. They seem to all prefer more the summer season than the cold winter. But in terms of the company, we do operate across Canada, or work with customers across Canada and the US. A little bit of work in South Africa and Australasia and in Latin America. Our headcount is about 35 peoples. We are a technology company first and foremost. So we're not the forestry consulting companies. Well, put it this way, we're not the people you call to go and cruise, do the cruising work. We've always said that we're a technology company. We're going to excel in that space and build the best possible technology for foresters. So speaking of technology, over the many years, in a couple of years, we'll hit that 2-decade mark. As the founder of the company, I still think of myself as a young guy, but at the same time, 2 decades at this, it's shocking to think of maybe, but we've invested many years in developing the Forestry geospatial platform. So it's an ecosystem of applications, and depending on where you work in the timber or across the timber harvesting supply chain, we've always focused on delivering data to support forestry companies in their planning, but then on top of that, have solutions, often software solutions that can provide insights into different aspects of that timber harvesting supply chain. So around the 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock mark, if you think of a clock face put on this diagram, we started off developing LiDAR inventory, specifically area-based inventory. So we've produced over like 70 million acres of this stuff, and this goes back to 2006. We're very early. We recognize that without the right tools for foresters, then they wouldn't be successful, because you get bogged down with how big the data is, where's the data, all this IT mumbo jumbo. So Afrids is an example of a web-based decision support tool that's still in use by many large organizations driving their business around planning and analytics. At the 11 o'clock mark is Prism, so we'll talk about that today. And at the 1 o'clock mark, focuses around our op tracker telematics solutions, where we're tracking over 1,500 machines, the performance of those machines, and able to do some really neat things around productivity and even building predictive rate models based on that data. So lots of cool AI, machine learning, deep learning things happening based on track logs and building work logs. We do have solutions in the transport space, less on the electronic logging device side of things, but more so on digital load slips, if you will, and really reducing the time for a scale in at the mill gate there and driving some real efficiencies. But one of the things that, as we were building out this platform, we realized is that although we were collecting data to address specific challenges or problems in segments or stages of the timber harvesting supply chain, we recognize that we need something to pull all of this data together. And that's what Stratus is. For some, Stratus is a forest management system. For others, it's an operational and tactical planning system. And for others, it's a data analytics platform. It just really depends what technology you're using now and what problems you're trying to solve. So we have other webinars on Stratus and OpTracker that you can check out our website or social media feeds to gain access to those webinars. Having been around, as I said, in a couple years, close to 2 decades, we've had the privilege to work with a lot of great forestry companies, ranging from the small firms, small consulting firms, to medium-sized firms, up to the big tier 1 enterprise customers, or even REITs and TIMOs. So we've really worked hard over the years to make sure we had a strong brand and we were viewed as a trusted technology partner. So in terms of Prism follows a pattern that many of our solutions adopt. And the key thing is to recognize that foresters often, guess what, are in the bush or in the field doing what foresters do best. They're out in the woods. So in this case, a lot of our solutions recognize there's a mobile component. So in this case, Prism, there's people who are cruising, they're taking tablets out to collect data. But we recognize also that there's people in the office who are going to be doing the planning or setting up these different cruise jobs. So often they'll use a web application to do that work. The workflows generally aren't as easily suited for a tablet. So we have these web applications to facilitate that work. You could run the web application on a tablet, right, through a web browser. They're just web apps. But generally, there's this pattern of managers or planners or schedulers, if you will, doing the work in the office and then pushing those jobs to the mobile side of things. So what is Prism? Well, it's a timber cruising and field data collection. It's predominantly 99% used for timber cruising. It's very flexible. So in principle, you can configure it for other types of field data collection. It's really focused on making your life easy around the sample design and plot grid generation. So you'll see in the demo how easy this can be done and some really cool features. But ultimately recognizes that you're cruising, you're collecting this data to tree data feed, volume, and inventory equations because you need to report. You need to roll up the data for various types of reporting. So Prism allows you to leverage pre-CRAN out of the box, the usual ones that you're used to using, but as well define your own. So really, if you can articulate that equation into a formula, you can actually define that in Prism and leverage that. What's unique about Prism? So the first thing, it's a SaaS solution. So SaaS stands for software as a service. And for the non-techie people, I often say it, or for the forester, it just means that you get your login and password and you're ready to rock and roll. You don't need to worry about, storage and like the usual IT mumbo jumbo stuff that, we really as foresters don't care about. It's about getting the job done. So as a SaaS solution, it's web-based, it's scalable. So you can use it for tons of cruisers, tons of jobs, or you can use them for just 1 or 2 for one cruiser. It's a modern solution. So unlike other solutions out there that I would call legacy, this is built using modern technologies. It has that look and feel of what you'd expect for any type of app that you would download from like an app store, as an example. It's cross-platform. So we recognized early on that we didn't want to care about whether you're an Android lover or an Apple lover or dare I say a Windows lover. But the idea here is Prism is a cross-platform application. So we have one code base that powers this application. We can deploy it across these different platforms. So from a maintainability point of view, building new features, it's pretty easy for us from the technology side of things. Prism enables you or gives you that two-way synchronization. And so what this really means is that you do your planning work in the web in the office, but just through a mouse clicks, I should say, excuse me, those cruise jobs are available on the mobile side of things. And just as people are collecting field data in the field or in the woods or the bush, if a click of synchronization, as long as you have internet connectivity, pushes that data, that field data back into the organization, which then can be analyzed and pushed through your volume equations and create those reports. So this idea is that as long as you have good cellular coverage, as an example, you really have the potential to essentially have near real-time data flowing back and forth from the office and from the field. And the last thing, or at least the last thing we've chosen to highlight is in terms of what's unique, it's around the offline navigation and proximity alarms. So we really make that navigation side of things really easy for cruisers to get to where they need to be, but also enable folks to set up different types of alarms based on proximity to things. Why is Prism important? So we often like to ask our users, believe it or not, what better way to get feedback on the product than to ask the people using it. So we asked our friends at Landvest, and we asked Rick Denial, who's the director of inventory analytics, for a testimonial. There's no other way of putting it. We asked them to give us a shout out, and they said Prism is a high-tech cruising solution that is incredibly intuitive and versatile. As a result, Landvest configured Prism for multiple cruise types, such as forest management, carbon, and 100% tally across multiple forests. So the idea here is you sense, the words configurable, it's intuitive, versatile, it's flexible, easy to use. They're using at Landvest for multiple cruise types, for multiple types of forest there. So it's really working for them. So what business problems does Prism solve? So one of the things we often hear, there's 6 that we've chosen to highlight, but one of the things we often hear is the data's collected, it's not standardized, and it's really difficult to analyze. It's almost like you created another unwanted job for yourself once the data's come in, and it's just gobbledygook. It's a mess and just a real pain in the bum. So with Prism, we standardize the data collection form. So everybody is collecting the same data against a consistent schema. The data when it comes in, it's going to not be a gobbledygook mess. We also know that, or we've heard that a lot of organizations have made past investments in their mobile devices, and they don't want to spend more money. They don't want another capital expenditure on hardware when maybe they just purchased some stuff in the last few years. So as I mentioned earlier, Prism is a cross-platform application. So hey, you choose your flavor, iOS, Apple, or Android, or Windows tablets. In principle, Prism works on a cell phone, but with anything, it's the screen real estate issue there. The tablets just have more real estate for screen than a cell phone. But in principle, bring your own device and use whatever you want. We touched on earlier just my comment around the whole offline GPS navigation side. People say it's really cumbersome to use based on current solutions. So with Prism, you have the opportunity to even pair with a high precision GNSS or GPS device. So if you're chasing that meter or sub-meter positioning, you want to get to that 2 foot positioning level, you have the opportunity to pair with something from the outside and get that precision you need. And as well, you have some proximity alertings as you approach the plot. So some really cool innovations around that space. This is one that makes me chuckle in the sense that folks are collecting data, and then essentially it takes forever. At least this is what we hear, literally forever, to QA the data, and and it's a real head scratcher in terms of the amount of extra unwanted work that's generated to QA the data and make sure that you have good data. So a really cool thing about Prism is that we can build in data validation rules in the mobile application so that the data is automatically QA'd as it's being inputted. So if you, as an example, you know the species in the area, you know the general what's realistic for values, you can configure that. So when the cruiser's out there collecting the data, if they enter something that just doesn't make sense, they can get immediate feedback that this is likely an error in data input or something's wrong, and they really need to double check before they actually leave the plot. And that way, they're not coming back synchronizing garbage data. So lots of cool features there. We often hear, there's many people collecting data in the same job. No problem. With the synchronization that we have in place with the protocols, we have rule sets that are built in to ensure that we don't create conflicts in sync. So this is based on feedback from many users who have been in this situation. So we've engineered some neat ways of handling that to basically negate that being an issue. The last point we have, and we always hear, is that, hey, look, Lim Geomatics, we spent years fine tuning our volume equations and our reports, and if we can't bring those along, then we just can't move off of our current solution, no matter how good Prism is and how I was going to say bad, but maybe not as efficient the current solution they're using. So with Prism, the really cool thing is it's super configurable. And what this really means is that you can define your own volume equations and create your own report templates. So the idea here is that as long as you can express that equation, we or you for that matter, because much of Prism is set up that you can do the bulk of the work yourself. You don't need to hire Lim Geomatics to do that. Once you've gotten trained and you've been onboarded, you can do some really neat work there. But the idea here is it's super configurable. You could create those equations and report templates and leverage them across the organization. So in terms of just general workflows, this slide is showing you the in-office workflows versus the in-field workflows. So just to reiterate, we are built on top of the ArcGIS system. We are ArcGIS release ready. And what we really mean by that is we're not just interfacing with, let's say ArcGIS Server, ArcGIS Enterprise. We're built on top of the system. And the best example to illustrate what I mean by that is if you collect data using Prism or you're editing data in the web application of Prism, that's immediately available to ArcGIS Enterprise, to Survey 123, to field maps. And the same goes the other way. If you're using those other Esri or ArcGIS tools, as soon as you synchronize with those tools, those data are immediately available to Prism and other Lim Geomatics products because we are built on top of the ArcGIS system. But from a workflow point of view, you'll localize your forest parameters in Prism. Using the web application, you'll configure the sampling forms using the web application. You'll create plot grids, a whole sample design and plot layout in the web application. But at this point, we've got to go out to the field and cruise and collect data. So the in-field workflow using the mobile application in terms of navigating to the plots and collecting the data kicks in. And then at that point, once you're done, then you'll be synchronizing that data back, and then the web application will be taken over to fire off different volume calculations and reporting engines so that you can complete your analyses going forward. So this is the segue of the webinar where I'll pass the baton to Xander, who'll go through and give you a couple demos. So Xander, at this point, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for the introduction to Lim Geomatics and Prism, Kevin. As he stated, I am going to walk through some of these Prism workflows. I will call out which workflows are done in the web application, the in-office workflows versus the in-field workflows done using the Prism mobile application. We're going to do this by demonstrating 5 overarching workflows to highlight some of the value of Prism that Kevin had noted earlier. So we're going to standardize inventory parameters in the web application. We'll create thousands of plots in seconds again in the web application. So this is your localization, standardization, and Prism sample design. Okay, and then you'll have offline navigation and data validation rules within the mobile application. And number 4, the inventory reporting templates back in the web app after your data has been synchronized from the mobile to the web app. And then we're going to look at the integration with ArcGIS dashboards. So leveraging some of those Esri tools and apps with Prism data. So let's get into standardizing some of these inventory parameters. What we're looking at here is the Prism web application with your modules down the left-hand side. You see nice modern user interface. We have our application settings here, which can be restricted by user permissions. You have different application settings can be set up for different forest regions. So you have Prism app settings. So this would be like a generic one. So maybe Southern Pine, you could have an application settings for Boreal Forest or Eastern Temperate, etc. Okay, so let's have a look at our species list here. Maybe you have an Eastern Hemlock, Red Maple, various species that you can modify or add. Okay, and it's so highly configurable, you can set up different groups for different regions. So we have a northeastern spruce fir group, and showing you some of that modern UI and easy to use interface. We'll remove and re-add the white spruce to this group. Okay. Maybe you want to make a group for different maples or for tolerant hardwood species. Okay. You now have also the ability to create diameter classes if you're making a diameter distribution chart using data collected. And again, Prism, that modern interface and good user experience lets you know when you do something that might make the data look funny. So it tells you that these 4 classifications are being overlapped by this one. But we're going to just revert that back. Okay, and you have the ability to create Prism equations, whether you use pre-canned equations provided by Lim Geomatics or whether you create your own custom equations. You have the ability to make equations for saw timber, for pulpwood. Maybe you have an equation that isolates specialty softwood if you're running a certain veneer or some other specialty product for requiring those softwood species. You can also take your segments, if they're collected in segments, and then have those rolled up into a total tree height. Okay, you have the ability also to, whether it's by Doyle or Scribner, it can handle just about any taper or volume equation. Okay, so let's now flip back. We're going to go into the next part of the demo. We'll show you how to create thousands of plots in seconds. Okay, so we are going to go to our plan module. We're going to take our inventory sampling, enter the jobs. All right, and let's get zoomed out. We're going to go up to the Boreal Forest. Okay, and we're going to create a new job. Give it a job name, perhaps. I don't know, this could be a carbon cruise, or call it whatever you would like. Okay, and we're going to take a stand, apply the plots. You can choose whether you're doing it by density or by spacing. Okay, so this is and you have the linear measurement unit that can be configured. So this is a 2x2 chain spacing with an interior buffer. You can also adjust the rotation as you are preparing the plot grid. Okay, so we're gonna add those. There's some more stands up here that we can add more plots to. Okay. And maybe you want to change the plot type. Maybe this is 1/70th acre. So it's going to take a configuration that is set up in the configure module. So you can customize your reports through this module, your sampling methods, etc. etc. Okay. Here we have it. 2,400 plots. Ready to add. And go ahead and create that job. And there we have 2,800 plots created just like that. Now we are going to take Prism offline and show some navigation and validation rules. So we're starting here with Prism validation, Prism navigation. So this is the Prism mobile application. I have it downloaded on my Windows device. Again, it's Windows, Android, or iOS compatible. You can see here, it shows you that distance to plot. I'm on the other side of Canada right now. So what we can also do is configure, whether it's in meters, feet, chains, that internationalization of units of measurement, depending on who is using the app. You have the ability to also configure those alerts. So whether you want to have an alert, if you're 5 feet, if you're using one of those global navigation satellite system, high precision GPS units paired with Prism, it can let you know whether you're within 5 feet of that plot center. Or if you're going through some thick understory with your head down, not watching the tablet, you can let it notify you. It'll send a loud audible beep as well as a visual when you're within 50 feet of your plot. And that way you can know to put your head up and start looking for plot center. Okay, so let's have a look at, we're going to turn off our navigation and enter our plot. You have a list of species. These are your a list of tree records. Okay, so you can add more or copy certain trees. So you see this just copied the one that didn't have a value entered. And if you want to go and enter a value, you can. Maybe the other one that you're looking at, you notice how it says DBH must have a value between 8 and 130. So this is configured in the web application in that configure module. Okay, so we put a 7. It's within the range, the acceptable range, but still not within that certain value of 8 to 130. But if you go to 5, see how it's red? And if I click out of that, we go to 3, it doesn't even let you put 3. So like 5 is erroneous, but we'll let you enter it. You can even have that min or max where it does not even let you enter the value. Okay, and then if you go to exit this plot, it lets you know. You saw that first screen, we had crown closure was not entered in your plot level. Then you have your tree level record number 1, does not have a DBH value. So let's go and we can fix that. Maybe go 7, or why don't we go 15? Your plot info, we can enter in, maybe there's a 50% crown closure and no more error messages. Next up, we're going to show you some inventory reporting templates. So once you've collected that data and you've synchronized, you have the ability to create templates for different purposes. So let's flip back over. See, we have the Lim Geomatics Prism mobile application that we were in. Now we're going back to the Prism web application. And we're going to take a look at this inventory report for the boreal forest. We have some various templates. If we pick merge crews, and it even shows you if there are equations that have errors, making sure that your data is being calculated appropriately, and you can go and assess. So right now, what we're looking at is a merchantable cruise rolled up by diameter distribution. Okay, so we can quickly go and look. There's that roll up for DBH classifications. If we remove that and apply, it's going to show that we have a tree list of data we've collected. It's telling you a tally of a single tree. Okay, it gives you some total height. If you want to move these columns around, you can. You can even add other columns. Okay, let's go to a plot rollup. There are 2 plots with data, and you can show how many trees have been tallied for each. Okay, and let's go back to our tree level. A seedling, and you notice how it notified us of the unsaved changes, making sure that you don't spend a lot of work configuring a specific template. Okay, and now we have just a simple species with a tree tally, a density, maybe the estimated total trees for that specific job. And you can save a copy or a new template. And next up is the integration with the ArcGIS dashboards. Okay, so we're going to show you this ArcGIS dashboard that has been configured for a cruising project in northern Alberta. It allows you to have different components within your dashboard. So whether you want to look at a gauge of certain number of plots, if you zoom in, you can see that. So you can zoom in and see that the gauge will automatically update. It even updates your number of plots the various cruisers have collected. You have the ability to have a representation of plots per strata type. On the top right here, just some project management QA. So even if some of those validation rules in the web app and the mobile app don't catch that data for the cruisers, you can quickly catch it in the web app or in this dashboard. Okay, we can zoom in. You have the ability also to do a count by certain species to make sure that you have an appropriate representation of your forest. So now to summarize the demonstration, we showed you how to standardize inventory parameters for different forest regions, showed you how to create those thousands of plots in seconds, and number 3, the offline navigation and data validation rules in the Prism mobile application. And then once your data is synchronized, viewing it in your reporting templates, in the inventory reports and configuring templates, as well as additional validation in the web application. And number 5, the integration with ArcGIS dashboards for some project management or deep dive analysis into your data.
Awesome, Xander. Thanks so much for giving those demos, and hopefully the folks that have watched those demos, you've enjoyed them. You agree that Prism is a very powerful cruising solution, and you're excited based on what you've seen. So at this point, I'll take over again in the webinar to close us out. So one of the things again is we want to emphasize that Prism is in use by various types of organizations. So when we asked why Prism was important, how important Prism was to them, we went again to our friends at Hampton Lumber and asked them. And so Paul Lule is the inventory manager. And so this is what he said. Well, first, it increases efficiency with standardized form and parameters. So we kind of touched on this, making sure to do that configuration work up front, and then making sure that things are as standardized as possible so that you have good data that's being collected. That aspect of configurability, Paul will say or has said that it's configurable to support different cruises and survey types. So this is really important. A lot of organization, have different cruise and survey types. You need that flexibility. The tool, and Prism affords that to Paul and Hampton Lumber. It scales with increasing land base and team size. And so really this is a case where a lot of organizations, you may be adding land, or from a workforce point of view, you may be scaling the team up or down depending on the situation. But the idea here is that Prism can scale very easily to meet your demands and your requirements. The integration with Esri apps is critical to Hampton Lumber. So we know they use other apps around field maps and Survey 123. So the idea here is that everything just works together. The pieces of the puzzle fit together. It's just it's harmonious in terms of how they're using Lim Geomatics technology and Esri apps. And this is one that's key, that when you hear me say it, you'll probably laugh, but it's actually a really key thing that sometimes we forget. But you don't need to be a GIS expert. I think as Xander, when I talk with him often, and he's a trained forester, went to school for forestry, and most of these folks say, I didn't go to school to study forestry, to sit behind a desk and work a GIS system. That's not what I signed up for. And so with Prism, it's bringing that GIS advanced capabilities, but also just making it easy so that you don't need to, fire up this complicated GIS desktop software. There's nothing wrong with that for the GIS power user, but for most foresters, it's like, I don't want to operate this big, clunky, crazy, complicated, super powerful desktop software when I just have some pretty straightforward workflows that I need to leverage. So as we look to wind down this webinar, what are 3 key takeaways that we want you to have? So the first one is Prism is a modern timber cruising solution that supports multiple cruise types and forests. So hopefully, based on our overview of what Prism is, as well as the demos that you've seen, you would agree that it is modern. It's a well thought out, well designed, beautiful looking app, but more importantly, it's also functional. So we haven't traded off, usability for within the application. Prism has been proven to reduce inventory data management by hours per day of cruising. So again, we've intentionally called on the testimonials from Landvast, from Hampton Lumber, but there's a host of other people that have been using this solution for many years. And so we it's not that we think, it's we know that by choosing Prism, you'll realize some massive cost savings by just reducing the number of hours of work. So hey, who wants to, at the end of the day, sit there at the desk and trying to QA and parse through various data sets versus figure out what cold soda pop they want to put in their hands after a long day. The other aspect is keeping in mind that we are built on the ArcGIS system. And you'll sense that we're very intentional with our language when we say we're built on the ArcGIS system. And again, just to emphasize, a lot of people say, they're Esri partners, they integrate with Esri. But for us, it's not about integration. It's about building on top of it. So it's like a seamless experience between Lim Geomatics applications with the Esri ones. And the other powerful thing here is that because of the modern architectural patterns we've taken, integrated with other systems, other business processes that are using your systems or external ones, becomes very, very easy. So some of these barriers between traditional silos kind of go away. We can leverage GIS services to bring all this data together without creating duplicating data and creating additional silos. So it's kind of the systems of systems idea. So in terms of final thoughts to leave you with, configure Prism to your forest region. If you're working in the Pacific Northwest, the Boreal, the Southern Pine, the Eastern Temperate, it doesn't matter. Prism has been field tested for all of these environments. So whether you're an integrated forestry company, landowners, government education, forest management, consulting, and REITs, it really doesn't matter. Prism has been in use across the board here. So it can scale to the size of the organization, the complexity of your workflows, and the number of people you have working in the field. Well, hey, everybody, we're going to wind down now. So I hope you enjoyed the Prism webinar. I hope you enjoy learning more about what Prism is, the problems that we're solving through Prism. But I also hope you enjoyed seeing it in action through the demos. I hope you're excited. I hope you want to, after this webinar, learn more. Please reach out to myself or Xander, where our contact information is listed here. We're sharing with you our direct cell phone numbers. So if you want to get a hold of us, one of us directly, here's our contact details. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining this webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.